10 o'clock on the dot this Friday morning. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. And we've got some dangerous heat and humidity today. Going to combine to push the feels like temperatures well over 100 degrees across parts of Middle Tennessee. In fact, Nashville could see a feels like temperature of 110. Full forecast coming up in 2 minutes. We're waiting on possible new charges for former President Donald Trump related to his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election from Special Counsel Jack Smith. Catherine Folders has more on where we stand now.
We know that Trump's lawyers were meeting with Special Counsel Jack Smith yesterday to make the case of why he shouldn't be indicted in that case. Jack Smith himself was in that meeting. But again, we're in wait and see mode here. We know that the former president received a target letter, which all indications associated with that point towards an indictment. But the reality of this is we just don't know when and if that will come.
Ford is recalling more than 870,000 F-150 pickups in the U.S. because the electric parking brakes can turn on unexpectedly. This covers certain pickups from the 2021 through 2023 model years with single exhaust systems. Owners are going to be notified by letter starting September 11th. The Federal Reserve's favorite gauge of inflation showed the pace of price increases slowing last month. For the 12 months that ended in June, the Commerce Department's Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index rose 3% compared to 3.8% in May. You take out energy and food prices, and the core PCE showed prices rising 4.1% from June to June. That's slightly below what economists expected. The same report shows Americans spending more last month than they did in May. And every 39 minutes, someone in this country dies in a crash involving an impaired driver. Jim Ryan says researchers are increasingly finding that alcohol isn't the only component.
Especially in states that have relaxed their marijuana laws, police are finding drivers impaired with not just alcohol, but alcohol combined with cannabis. But recognizing THC impairment can be tricky, so the Governor's Highway Safety Association has given grants for studies like the one in Maryland.
They actually have volunteers who are willing to be dosed with cannabis so that the officers are then able to witness what the impairing effects of this look like.
The association's Pam Fisher says the information is then shared with law enforcement agencies around the country.
And this just in, Mitch McConnell says he will continue serving as Senate GOP leader after health questions whenever he froze up during his remarks at a presser earlier this week. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's Chris Hand. So with all of this going on with the Bidens, all of the criminal investigations, a lot of people think that this is the biggest issue facing the Democrats in 2024. Whether or not Biden will run, whether or not these criminal activity, alleged criminal activity, or whatever you want to call it, will catch up with him, whether or not he'll be busted for the influence peddling. And I just want to point out, I don't know if that's the biggest problem facing the Democrats in the 2024 election. I think the biggest problem facing the Democrats in 2024 is all of the different groups underneath the Democrat umbrella that don't get along or see eye to eye. I mean, they always claim and they celebrate, and they are the most diverse voting group, right? But that comes with unique challenges. And we're seeing those unique challenges emerging in Michigan and Chicago. One big problem, or actually two big problems, are merging into one in Chicago right now. You have the violence of the Democrat cities, which is just chaotic. But also in Chicago, you're having a migrant crisis and illegal aliens all over the streets, much like we're seeing in New York. But in Chicago, the problems are merging into one because the residents, who a lot of times are the ones that are, responsible for the violence that we see in Chicago, aren't having it anymore with the migrants. This is from a local Chicago news station. There was a hearing on just this, and the residents of Chicago are not happy with the migrant situation.
Many of these residents say they no longer have any tolerance for the disruptive behavior by those seeking asylum here. It's making them feel unsafe.
They disrespect us, they rob us, they harass us.
And their patience is wearing thin.
Let me say this. They got one more time to deal with it, because otherwise, next time they deal with it, they're going to deal with it from the streets. We're going to take over it.
Oh.
Nobody's going to be able to stop us from what we're going to do to them.
Much of the residents' anger was directed at city officials in attendance, including 20th Ward Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor, Chicago Deputy Police Chief Stephen Chung, and Family and Support Services Commissioner Brandy Kanazi. At one point, police had to intervene, breaking up an argument during public comment. Many of these.
It's an absolute mess in Chicago. It's an absolute mess. Now, we all see the viral videos of young urban youths who, when they're asked who they're supporting in the presidential election, overwhelmingly a lot say Trump. And it's shocking to the Democrat Party that these young urban males are aligning more with Donald Trump and the Republican Party now than the Democrat Party. There's the old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? But what we're seeing is that is not true in practice. Residents of Chicago are saying that if the migrant problem continues, they're going to take action into their own hands. And if there's anything we can believe about residents in Chicago, that they're willing to take action into their own hands. They're absolutely willing. I mean, Chicago is one of the most violent places in the country. I mean, on average, we're seeing like hundreds and hundreds of homicides. I mean, they say that the homicides are declining, but in 2022, there were 688 homicides. In 2021, there were 802 homicides. And things always heat up in the summertime. Just naturally. Things get more violent in the summertime. And we're hearing residents saying, if you don't fix this problem of migrants robbing from us, harassing us, the streets will deal with it.
Let me say this. They got one more time to deal with it, because otherwise, next time they deal with it, they're going to deal with it from the streets. We're going to take over it.
We're going to take over, and we're going to deal with it from the streets. What? Jeez. So, you're talking about actual violence in the streets directly because of Democrat policies from two competing groups under the same Democrat umbrella. And they're mad that their Democrat leadership are doing nothing about this problem except making it worse. So How does this get better for the Democrat Party? I don't think it does. I think you're going to see a mass exit of the Democrat Party. And we're seeing African Americans, black youth, waking up to the fact that the Democrats don't have their best interests in heart. They just don't. You can look at organizations like Turning Point USA's Blexit, which is the black exit from the Democrat Party. You can look at popular culture with Kanye West railing against Democrats. These ideas are permeating, and the youth are starting to realize and wake up to the fact that the Democrat Party does not have their best interest at heart. So you have two competing groups underneath the Democrat umbrella, butting heads. And the Democrats aren't going to get the border better. The border and the weakness at the border is causing all of this. Just a couple days ago, Breitbart reported that 5,300 migrants were apprehended in a 4-day stretch at the Arizona border. A couple days before that, Breitbart reported that in 5 days, 4,800 migrants were apprehended in one Texas border sector. That's one sector. And that's the apprehensions. That's not who got away. The border is so wide open that these cities are being overrun. And it's all these sanctuary cities, which is Democrat policies. So you have low-income residents of the city saying, we're being harassed, we're being robbed, you need to do something about this. Do you think that when it comes to the next election, that these residents are going to be willing to vote Democrat and vote for more of the policies that are affecting them in such a negative way? I don't. And you know what? Sometimes things need to get worse before they get better. And it's not just these two groups. It's not just illegal aliens and urban males and females in big blue city districts that are butting heads. But on the flip side, you're seeing LGBTQ groups butt heads with Muslim groups. Also, two competing groups under the same Democrat umbrella. This is a real problem for the Democrats. Your base is fracturing. There is infighting in ways we have never seen before because of real problems. In Dearborn, Michigan, late last year, there was school board fighting and meetings that went crazy because of the books they were putting in Dearborn, Michigan schools. If you don't know, Dearborn is one of the most predominantly Muslim communities in all of America. Dearborn, Michigan. Random, but true. And they had the Democrat school board putting in books in their schools like genderqueer or this book is gay. And gosh, are you shocked that conservative Muslims don't want their kids reading those books? And it led to absolute chaos at school board meetings with this predominantly Muslim community versus the LGBTQ woke community.
Let's talk about what this really is. You hate gay people, and it's obvious, because look at how you behave when one gay person speaks. Look at how you act. And your children are watching.
Wow, this is a huge part of my overall identity, and I am very proud to be queer and transgender. It is not my entire identity. When you are young, it is incredibly difficult to be unable to put names to what you're feeling and experiencing. Had I been aware of the books and resources available to students in the libraries.
I mean, you have two competing groups. The LGBTQ faction is saying that we need these books in the library, and they're being booed by the Muslim families in Dearborn, Michigan. Booed, jeered. This isn't sustainable for the Democrat Party. I'm sorry. There's nothing sustainable about it. And the Muslim members of the community, they're coming with sane, rational arguments about why they don't want these books in their school.
Meeting is starting to die down right now. The crowds are thinning out. I want to give you a live look inside as they wrap things up. There were a few tense moments and heated exchanges tonight as they really got into this pretty contentious issue. I want to have you guys take a look at that really quick.
A normal, psychologically sound and stable mind would come to a conclusion that that specific material is nothing but sexually explicit.
To the LGBT community, the majority of parents are not here to attack your right to exist in a free society. Criticism of age-inappropriate content is not criticism of the LGBT community.
These families don't want these books for their kids. It goes against their religion. Can you blame them? But the LGBTQ alphabet mafia wants to force them on their children. Religion be damned. So two competing groups underneath the Democrat umbrella fighting about this. Dearborn's gone so far as to ban these books and even ban the pride flag. And to that I say, good for you. The only flag that should be raised above any public government-funded building is the American flag. Full stop. But it's not sustainable for the Democrat Party to have different competing groups underneath your umbrella trying to pull in the same direction, fighting with each other. And that creates real opportunity for the conservative movement to lean in on these issues and point out that the problems have been caused by your Democrat leadership. It was your Democrat leadership that brought these books into the schools. It was your Democrat leadership that left the border wide open. It was your Democrat leadership in these big blue cities that caused all the violence. And unfortunately, as I just played, it could get even more violent for illegal aliens in Chicago because the residents don't want the illegal aliens there. And the leadership is ignoring them. Completely ignoring them. And we're seeing this over and over and over, illegal aliens overrunning blue cities. And to that I say good. These are the policies you voted for. You wanted to be a sanctuary city, deal with the repercussions. You have migrants sleeping outside on the streets in New York City. You have Mayor Eric Adams in New York City begging illegal aliens not to come anymore. Go somewhere else. Effectively enacting a bleep off, we're full policy. And the only people that are hurt are the residents. And low-income residents at that, might I add. This isn't happening in the cushy suburbs. This is happening deep in the cities, in these blue cities. You know, you're not going to see these issues on Martha's Vineyard, but you're going to see them in downtown Chicago. And in downtown Chicago, the residents are speaking up and saying, if you don't fix this problem, we'll be forced to.
Let me say this. They got one more time to deal with it, because otherwise, next time they deal with it, they're going to deal with it from the streets. We're going to take over it.
We're going to take over. The residents of Chicago have lost faith in their democratically elected officials. They've lost faith in the policies, and they're ready to fight back. I don't think violence is the option. I don't think it's ever the move. But I don't think it's going to be avoidable for much longer if these policies keep up. And I don't think that the Democrat Party is sustainable with all of these competing groups with competing interests in the infighting that is happening. Has the Democrat Party even tried to address this? Of course not. Of course not. And I hope that Republican leadership will see this as an opportunity to have grassroots movements go into these cities and explain conservative positions so that way we can gain some ground in these cities. Because the opportunity is there. These groups are fighting with each other, and we shouldn't let a crisis go to waste. We should take that page out of the Democrats' playbook. It absolutely is a crisis. But it's a crisis that can be fixed. It's a crisis that's solvable with the right leadership. So with all the fighting in the Democrat Party, I say good. We knew that it wasn't sustainable. We knew that these groups don't really get along at their core. But the Democrats, they campaign on racism and bigotry. They campaign on media confusion. and Orange Man bad, and they neglect the real issues. So let's lean into the real issues and present real solutions, and we can make some real headway. I'm Chris Hand. It is 10:21 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you for being here with me. Hey, it's Chris Hand for Paul Winkler, Inc. I'm a husband and a dad to 4 wonderful kids. So financial stability is big. I got weddings to think of. I got colleges I might have to pay for. So I've already been having nightmares about that and financial stability. Now, I've been a listener of Paul Winkler's radio show since I moved to Nashville. And after meeting with him and realizing he's the same guy I heard on the air, smart, honest, legit, I was all in, and I decided to become a client of Paul's. Paul and his team hold themselves to a higher level of fiduciary standard than is required. And because of that standard, the government regulators require that I tell you that I'm paid every time this commercial airs. But it was when I sat down with Paul and had a chance to break bread with him and learn about his method and have my financial questions answered honestly that really sold me on becoming a client. I've been impressed. Paul's a smart guy. He knows the financial world better than I do. And with Paul and his team, I'm confident that my goals can be accomplished. And I'm confident that they do it with me in mind because nothing is done on commission. They're big on education. He's made my financial goals realistic by explaining what to do and why, and he can do the same for you. The investment education is evidence-based and backed by Nobel Prize-winning research. So you should check Paul Winkler out. Every office is run by a degreed planner with over 20 years of experience, and you can feel the difference because of that. Paul's team and the rest, man, experience equals confidence. So do what I did. Talk to one of Paul's team members today. Find an office near you and set up a complimentary 15-minute phone call right now on his website, paulwinkler.com. That's paulwinkler.com, or call 615-851-1950.
Ford's best-selling pickup is being recalled. Inflation is cooling off, but not Middle Tennessee. However, It is going to be a little cooler than first expected. I'll tell you just by how much coming up at 10:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Ken Weaver bringing the good news. Thank you, Ken.
Welcome, Brother Chris.
Thank you. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN, 1025. I was talking about the infighting of the Democrat Party and how these competing groups, Muslim, Alphabet Mafia, urban youths, they're butting heads, and how that creates real opportunity for Republicans. I got a text from 2936, and he said, even Democrats get tired of things being forced on them. Americans should never tolerate forced compliance. So true. 0094 said, here's my question for all the people that want to end fight violence in Chicago. Why are you mad now? You voted these people in there to do exactly what they are doing. And that's the thing. You voted in this leadership in Chicago, and now you're dealing with the repercussions. It's a crazy story, and I don't think it's the last we've heard. And again, I think Republicans need to lean in to the infighting of the Democrat base, because the infighting is there. It's prevalent. It's easy. We got to poke at those weaknesses and explain to them real solutions, not, oh, Republicans are racist, you got to vote Democrat. That's all the left has. That's it. We can provide real solutions, and we should. All right, I saw this on Twitter. Just in, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has revealed that the Biden administration has denied his request for Secret Service protection. Not only did they deny it, but they waited 88 days and didn't respond for 88 days before they denied it. Insane. RFK issued a statement. He said, since the assassination of my father in 1968, candidates for president are provided Secret Service protection, but not me. I find it odd that Hunter Biden, a private citizen, gets a 6-car motorcade to go to court for tax evasion and Secret Service detail, but RFK Jr., who is from one of the most famous families in American history, whose father was assassinated while campaigning for president, he is not allowed Secret Service protection. The Democrats really don't like RFK Jr. It makes me like him a lot more. Now, I do like RFK Jr., and I don't like everything he says, but here's the reason why I like him. He reminds me a lot of Trump in the fact that he's an outsider in his own party. He says what he thinks, and I authentically believe, I truly, truly believe that his ideas are his. I've said this over and over again, but I think it's worth driving the point home. The only thing that you get punished for these days is telling the truth. Thought crimes. RFK Jr. is a clear thought criminal. And that's why the Democrat Party hates him. Because he points out obvious truths, and he doesn't care whose feeling he hurts in the on the way. But the Biden administration has denied his request for Secret Service protection after not responding to that request for 88 days. But the president's crackhead son, who is admitted to tax evasion, who's on trial for a gun charge, who could be brought up on the Foreign Agent Registration Act charges, he gets 6 cars to go to court. Incredible. The hypocrisy of the left on full display on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Chris Hand. Find me off air on Twitter, Instagram, Truth Social, at Chris Hand on air. And right now, the time, my friends, is 10:30. It's the news on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.30 on the dot this Friday morning. I'm Ken Weaver with your top story. So the National Weather Service has brought down its prediction of triple-digit heat today. Instead of 110 degrees, it's only going to feel like 109 degrees in Nashville and other parts of Middle Tennessee. Meanwhile, another triple-digit temperature day in Arizona, where Alex Stone says the Phoenix area bringing in coolers to handle an influx in people dying.
Maricopa County typically sees an increase in deaths in July, but the county says this year has been worse than prior years. They don't know yet if that's because of the heat. 25 deaths have been attributed to heat in Maricopa County. Almost 250 more deaths are being investigated. The county is now bringing in 10 coolers to increase capacity for bodies at the medical examiner's office in case that room is needed. They have not utilized them yet. The coolers similar to what were brought in to handle bodies during the pandemic.
Ford is recalling more than 870,000 newer F-150 pickup trucks in the U.S. because the electric parking brakes can turn on unexpectedly. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. We know that diversification is an important part of the investing process, but how do you reduce risk of a portfolio through diversification? Well, you use correlations. Now think of bathing suit sales and suntan oil sales. They tend to move together, right? Think of bathing suit sales versus winter coat sales. More dissimilar movement, and that's the idea. But why is diversification so important? Well, think about it this way. Everybody would like to have this happen with their investments. They just go straight up. But what we know is this is really what tends to happen. Markets may go way up and then down, or down then way up. Now let's say if we isolate parts of that curve right there, and the first curve right there, and the second curve right there. If you're putting money away for retirement, every time you put money in, if this is what's going on, you're buying more shares. Then just before you retire, the market goes up, you're really happy. If, on the other hand, you keep paying a higher and higher price and then the market goes down, you're really sad. And we can't choose what's going to happen with the market next. But what we can do is what we know through academic research, and there are Nobel Prizes awarded for this, is we can look for things that tend to move in dissimilar fashion. And what happens when we do that, we can reduce the volatility of the portfolio, hence bringing those curves in. Now that's the idea. Now if you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN 1035. It's hot outside. Have you noticed that?
Just a little toasty.
Yeah, and the media, the media is going to tell you it's climate change.
I saw something earlier today on Instagram that said that we are going from global warming to global boiling.
Oh, my goodness. Fear sells, my man. Fear sells. In fact, if I recall correctly, when Project Veritas leaked a video last year from a CNN employee, he said just that. He said that they would be pivoting from the fear of COVID to the fear of climate change. And gosh darn it, did you know what happened? They've pivoted from the fear of COVID to the fear of climate change.
We're going to start focusing mainly on climate like global warming. And so our next thing is going to be for climate change awareness.
Climate crisis, climate change.
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 Climate change. Climate change.
Climate change. Climate crisis.
Climate change. Climate change. Warming climate. Climate crisis.
Climate change. Climate change.
Climate change. Climate change.
Climate change.
Climate emergency.
Climate change.
Climate change. Climate change. Climate change.
Climate change.
Climate change.
Are you getting the point?
Climate change.
Climate change. Climate crisis.
I think I might need another 30
Climate
seconds.
change.
Hold on.
George
Let me keep
Floyd
going.
moment for climate.
Climate change. Climate crisis.
Global warming.
Climate change is real. It's the climate crisis. Climate change.
Climate
All right, I
change.
think I
Climate
get it
change.
now.
Climate change.
Climate change.
Climate change. Climate change.
Climate change. Climate change.
Climate change.
Climate crisis.
Climate change.
Climate change.
Climate change.
The planet is on fire.
Do you think it's going to be just like a lot of fear? Climate.
Yeah, fear sells.
Fear sells, surprisingly. My favorite one was CNN's Vance, what's his last name? Vance something. But he says in the middle there, he's like, this is a George Floyd moment for climate change. Jeez. Oh my gosh, it's not going away. Like, it's summertime, guys. It's summertime. It's always something different with the climate change people. And Hillary Clinton weighed in. She's dealing with the hot summer temperatures like everybody else, but she tweeted that MAGA Republicans are to blame for the climate crisis. Okay.
Because we're all driving our big diesel trucks and shooting polar bears. I don't know.
I've
all over the place.
I just want to go on record. I've never shot a polar bear.
I have not either.
But we got to save the polar bears, guys. It's climate change. Here's what kills me. When she tweeted that MAGA Republicans are at fault for climate change and the crisis, she said that she quote tweeted this tweet from the CAP Action, and it said July 4th was the Earth's hottest day in over 100,000 years. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's just factually incorrect. You're basing it off scientific models. That's where they're getting these numbers from. And you know what? I remember when scientific models said we were going to have what? Like 100 million deaths from COVID, billions of dead, right? The scientific models, coincidentally, end up being not very scientific and wrong. Is that weird how that works? They say the data used to collect that 100,000 year figure only goes back to 1979. Just 40 years of data, and we can gin up the rest. Insane.
It's all on a loop. We'll go to something else in a couple months here, and then we'll loop right back onto it.
Also, when I was doing the math in my head for how long it would be back to 1979, I realized that I'm perpetually living in the state of the year being 2000. Like the 10 years ago was the 90s for me. 30 years ago was the 70s. And I just want to let the audience know that's going to be an issue moving forward. It's not something that I expect fixing. Also, this climate change stuff, again, it's been around since the 70s. Although in the 70s, it wasn't the heating that was the issue. It was the coming ice age.
I think we'd have to think about moving someplace else.
Move where? The brutal buffalo winter might become common all over the United States. Climate experts believe the next ice age is on its way. According to recent evidence, it could come sooner than anyone had expected.
Where'd those experts go?
At weather stations in the far north, temperatures have been dropping for 30 years. Seacoasts, long free of summer ice, are now blocked year-round.
Wait a second. I thought icebergs were melting. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense at all. Also, I want to set the record straight. So there were some fires that happened last year in Yosemite National Park. And the main one was the Oak Fire. And, they blamed the fires on, you guessed it,
Climate change.
Climate change.
They blame the fires on climate change. It's so shocking.
Climate change. Climate change.
Climate change.
So it turns out that Oak Fire was intentionally set by an elderly California man. Yeah, he was arrested in connection with that massive forest fire. Believe it or not, it wasn't the dreaded
Climate change.
Climate change. Climate change.
No. It was just an old man who set a fire. Yeah. The blaze known as the Oak Fire was originally attributed to climate change.
Climate change.
Climate change.
But by many Democrats, they all said it was climate change. And they used that incident as an opportunity to push their agenda for climate change.
Climate change.
Climate change.
Mariposa County District Attorney Walter Wall explained that 4 separate fires have been intentionally set in Mariposa County, leading to the Oak Fire, which went on to consume 127 residential structures and engulf nearly 19,000 acres of land. It's so weird, though, that when it's proven that this guy was out there burning stuff down because, he's an arsonist and a pyromaniac, they don't retract their claims that it was
Climate change. Climate change.
Climate change. Climate change.
No, they let that continue to be the narrative, and they conveniently leave out the part that it actually wasn't.
Climate change. Climate change.
It wasn't climate change. So weird. But I do want to let everybody know that with this new climate crisis, and with the hottest days in over 100,000 years, that Joe Biden's got a plan. And this plan, it is earth-shattering. It's earth-shattering. This is leadership in action. We got problems. Thanks to Joe Biden, we got solutions.
It's not going to alleviate the heat problem right now. But we also have a number of programs to do everything from allow people to have the ability to get help to literally paint their roofs white, to change their windows and doors and get tax credits for doing it, so air conditioning doesn't escape. To be able, there's a whole bunch of programs that are out there that, as we get through the heat wave, as we get by this worst part, that we're able to invest in the communities to keep it from happening as badly next time it occurs.
Yep. Thanks, Joe. There's a couple points. I don't want to bury the lead. He quietly says,
as we get through the heat wave.
Yeah, it's a heat wave. These things happen. But I also want to point out just the absurdity of one of his solutions.
A number of programs to do everything from allow people to have the ability to get help to literally paint their roofs white.
We're going to get help to paint our roofs white.
Paint their roofs white.
Are you kidding me?
Give me a break.
Who's going to help me paint my roof white?
Paint the roofs white.
I need help. But again, this is the Biden administration for you. When there's problems, you know what? Every problem has a solution. 9550 texted and he said, well, he's already cured cancer, so now he's on to stopping climate change. You're right. Cancer's done. And you know what? Now it's time to get out there with a paintbrush and
paint the roofs white.
Just get that thing painted. Why? How is painting your roof white going to solve climate change? But that's the leadership we got. You gotta fix these problems, and the main thing to do is
paint the roofs white.
Yep. 7434 texted in and said, so we then freeze in the wintertime? Well, no, because it's a global crisis. It's hotter than it's been in 100,000 years, 7434. So, the white on the roof, it's going to be so hot this winter, it's going to feel like summer. And you're going to be thankful that the Biden administration got out there and helped you.
Paint the roofs white.
Painted your roof white. I'm getting a bunch of texts in. 3555 texted in said, well, that seems kind of racist. It does.
Paint the roofs white.
We played that game yesterday. You can Google anything and say, is this racist? I wonder if you Google, are roofs racist, if something would come up. Hold on, let me see. Are roofs racist? Let me see. Just all Dylan roof. Nothing about actual roofs. All right. That's a big fail on my part. But, I hope my wife isn't at the hardware store right now getting me paint to, get out there on the roof this weekend and get to work.
Paint the roofs white.
Enjoy that 105-degree weather and just get painting.
Oh, my gosh. 6437 texted in and said, bro, you're just not woke. No, I'm not. I try not to be. Scott texted in and said, any roofer will tell you the color of shingles do not matter, so painting the roof white would do nothing other than probably mess up your shingles and require that you put a new roof on. Listen, Scott, I appreciate the super text, but when the president gives us a solution like this,
paint the roofs white,
we can't just ignore it. Roofers be damned. We need to get... It's 1538 texted in and said, painting the roof white is a Jedi mind trick. Oh my gosh. It's so funny. This is real life. This is what we're dealing with in 2023. They thought in 2023 we would have flying cars and the world would be at our fingertips. Instead, our leadership is just out here like,
paint the roofs white.
We got to paint our roof white. Jeez. 6872 texted in and said, allow people to have the ability to get help. That is insane. It is insane. 6890 texted in and said, it's more like a global political crisis. I've never seen so many stupid people in charge of running governments. Listen, 6890, I don't think we should count our chickens before they hatch. I have a fear that we could get a lot dumber in the next year or so as we do this. Keith texted in and said, if your roof isn't painted white by now, it's Trump's fault. You're right. Orange man won't let you paint roof.
Paint the roofs white.
John texted in and said, why stop at the roof? Paint the lawn white too. 4327. When I was a kid, we called it climate change. We call it climate change seasons. Listen, 4327. We have 100 million thousand years of data, according to the Biden administration, and this is the hottest it's ever been. So, jeez. This is what they do. These people will tell us all about climate change, all about how to fix it, while they fly to Davos on their private jets. And we have to worry about our carbon footprint. But, the solution is never planting trees. That's never a solution. It's always the unintended consequence. They told us, all the paper bags, we're going to ruin the environment. We're going to lose all the trees. So we switched to plastic bags. And now it's like, plastic's killing the turtles. So then now we got to go back to paper bags. And it's the unintended consequences. And the people that tell us that are like John Kerry, who's, just an idiot. They're all idiots. You got to paint your roof white, guys. 615-737-9986 if you want to weigh in on the topic. 1538 said, so what do we do after Labor Day? I don't know. Well, you got to paint it back then. But don't worry, because the government will help you with tax subsidies to paint it back after Labor Day. I'm sure. Jeez. To stop, Ken texted in, 5068 said, to stop the heat wave, everybody with a house should turn on their air conditioner to full blast and open all their windows.
Better airflow.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Listen, We can cool down the climate together if we all do our part. It starts, guys.
Paint the roofs white.
With painting your roof white. The time is 10:50 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I'm going to go hop on HomeDepot.com. I'm going to find, the best white paint I can get because I got stuff to do this weekend. Got a lot on my list. Fighting climate change. That's at the top of the list. I hope it's at the top of yours too. It's 10:51 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Got a crash downtown. It is the on-ramp, the right lane blocked to go from 24 eastbound to 40 westbound. And you might be surprised to learn who is spurring increased consumer spending in this country. And the National Weather Service has revised its prediction for just how hot it's going to get today. Details coming up at 11 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Ken Weaver, are you going to paint your roof this weekend?
I'm going to paint it white, bro.
I hear that is a solid solution. All right.
And my lawn, too.
Oh, my gosh. That was so funny. On a more serious note, Phil Valentine is being inducted into the 2023 Tennessee. He's a member of the 2023 class and being inducted into the Tennessee Radio Hall of Fame.
That's amazing.
Everybody loves Phil. I fell in love with this station listening to Phil. 306 every afternoon. I think he's one of the greatest of all time. I wish that the man got his flowers while he was here for this, but this is a huge honor. And the induction ceremony is happening tomorrow night, July 29th, in Columbia, Tennessee. You can go. You can get tickets. They're available. If you go to our very own Pamela Furr's Twitter, which is Pamela Furr, at Pamela Furr, F-U-R-R, Pamela Furr, she has all the info for Phil Valentine's Tennessee Radio Hall of Fame ceremony induction. It's going to be awesome. This is Phil's induction. I never got to meet Phil, but I feel like I knew him, just like so many people that listen to Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So if you have the ability to go and you want to get tickets, find Pamela Furr on Twitter, at Pamela Furr. She's got the Eventbrite link, all the links to get tickets, and celebrate Phil Valentine for the legend that he is tomorrow night in Columbia for the Tennessee Radio Hall of Fame 2023 induction. Phil's the greatest. R.I.P. Phil. Let that man get his flowers and celebrate him tomorrow night. It's 11 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Chris Hand, and it's time for the news with our boy Ken.
This Friday morning, I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories, and it's not going to be as hot as first expected. National Weather Service adjusting the forecast for heat index temperatures from up to 110 degrees down to 109 degrees in Nashville and other parts of Middle Tennessee. I'm sure we'll notice the difference. Full forecast in 2 minutes. Another triple-digit temperature day in Arizona where officials say the Morgan Phoenix is filling to capacity. Alex Stone says help being brought in.
It's not clear yet why so many people are dying in Maricopa County right now, but heat is one likely factor. The medical examiner has ruled 25 deaths this year were from the heat, but there are nearly 250 more deaths that are under investigation. And because of the surge in people dying, Maricopa County is now bringing in 10 coolers to increase capacity for bodies similar to what was done during the pandemic. The county tells us they're not yet utilizing those extra coolers, but they want to have them ready.
The economy is heating up. The Commerce Department reported this week the country's GDP rose at a rate of 2.4% in the second quarter, up slightly from 2% earlier this year. Many experts pointing fingers at one surprising cause for the increase to summer spending. Whit Johnson.
What's behind at least part of this current spending boost? Are you ready for it? Some local economies are pointing to Taylor Swift and Beyonce. Not only are people shelling out big money to tickets to see their shows and other performances, but cities from Philadelphia to Chicago are reporting hotels filling up and a bump in tourism. One research group estimates that the U.S. leg of Taylor Swift's tour will generate $5 billion.
President Biden to sign an executive order on how U.S. military investigators will handle sexual assault cases. They're going to go to an independent prosecutor from outside the service instead. And that independent prosecutor will decide whether to prosecute those sex assault offenses. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hey, it's Chris Hand. So much going on. I cannot find a good deal on white paint for my roof.
Dang, that's unfortunate. You'd think they'd be throwing out coupons left and right with all that talk from Joe.
Like, well, he said he was going to help us save money. And I don't know, maybe the rebates haven't kicked in yet. I don't know.
I seen a 2-for-1 deal on each can that I buy.
Yeah. Joe Biden, in case you missed it, Joe Biden said to fight climate change, you gotta paint your roof white. Give me some audio.
Paint the roofs white.
You gotta paint your roof white. So put that on your honey-do list for the weekend. Paint your roof white. Also, in the news lately, Eric Swalwell, he's been doing all sorts of things, endorsing pedophiles and just all in all being just a total putz. And I thought it was important to remind the people who our friend Eric Swalwell is, okay? This is who Eric Swalwell is.
And if you want to talk about Swalwell, let's talk about Swalwell, because you have not had the briefing that I had. I had the briefing and Nancy Pelosi had the briefing from the FBI. The FBI never came before this Congress to tell the leadership of this Congress that Eric Swalwell had a problem with a Chinese spy until he served on Intel. So it wasn't just us who were concerned about it. The FBI was concerned about putting a member of Congress on the Intel committee that has the rights to see things that others don't because of his knowledge and relationship with a Chinese spy. They brought it to the works of the leaders. I've got that briefing. So I do not believe he should sit on that committee. And I believe there's 200 other Democrats that can serve on that committee.
Yeah, Eric Swalwell, he's an absolute bum. But he keeps making headlines for whatever reason. Maybe because, people think he's a good-looking guy that he should be at the front of the Democrat Party, especially when you're dealing with the likes of Joe Biden telling you to paint your roof white. Maybe Eric Swalwell is a better bet, but he's just been on a tear lately, and he was making the rounds again last night.
You, along with everyone else, watched yesterday as this plea deal was put on hold by a federal judge who called the terms of the plea deal, I think some of the words used specifically were unusual and atypical. Do you think that a plea deal like that would have existed had it been for, Hunter Brown instead of Hunter Biden?
It sure looks like it. I'll tell you about a guy named Roger Stone who owed allegedly $1 million in back taxes, and DOJ went after him civilly and not criminally. I don't want Hunter to be treated any better or worse. He did attempt so far, he's a private citizen, by the way, to resolve this case and has paid the back taxes.
Now I know why they like Eric Swalwell. He's a master of the pivot. An absolute master of the pivot. Hunter Biden, I want everybody to have equal treatment under the law. I'll tell you about Roger Stone. And Hunter Biden's a private citizen, by the way. Thanks, Eric. That's why the Democrat Party likes you. Interesting. Very interesting. A lot of the Democrat Party has been asked about this Hunter Biden stuff. And we literally get the same script from everybody over and over again.
Hey, let me go back to the first question of the briefing. I know you said not a lot's changed since yesterday and that it's a personal matter, but from a presidential perspective, is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
Well,
I just said no. I just answered.
Yep, the answer is no. He won't pardon his son. That's a lie. Everybody knows that's a lie. Joe Biden would absolutely pardon his son. Anybody that thinks he wouldn't is just crazy, because there are very, very few crimes that I wouldn't, if I had the opportunity, I wouldn't be willing to pardon my son for. Just me. I'm sure you feel the same way about your kids, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So yeah, he would pardon his son. Everybody knows it. Nothing shocking there. But, we do deserve some answers. I think that it's only fair that we get some answers about what's going on with Hunter Biden. But the White House keeps denying those answers. They don't want to tell us anything because Hunter he's He's a private citizen. So KJP was asked if Biden would pardon his son. He said he wouldn't. The press briefings are getting very spicy. I love it. It's been a while since the White House press briefings were must-watch TV. Like for a while there with Jen Psaki, they were fire. They were very entertaining. And then when Karine Jean-Pierre got in, just by the sheer fact that she was the first ever black openly LGBTQ alphabet mafia press secretary, it was just great. It was must-watch TV. She's not very smart, but then it kind of got dull in season 2. But we've had this plot twist that has just elevated the entertainment value once again.
The tax matter that had Hunter Biden in court in Wilmington yesterday, it had criminal information saying that he hadn't paid 1.2 to about 1.5 million in taxes owed. So my question is, number one, I know the president doesn't talk to him, you said about his business, but was he aware at the time that he wasn't filing his returns in a timely fashion? And also, did he ever advise him to pay? Because Hunter testified in court that 1 year he was sober when he didn't file. So did they ever discuss the tax situation?
He said, did his dad ever advise him to pay his taxes? No, come on. Hunter's the smartest guy that Joe knows. Why would Joe think that Hunter wasn't paying his taxes?
I'm not going to get into the specific of the case. I've answered this question over and over again. Nothing has changed from the statement that I made yesterday. Nothing's going to change from the few times that I've gotten this question in the briefing room. We're not going to comment on this. This is an independent investigation that is being led by a Trump-appointed prosecutor, that is being led by clearly the Department of Justice, right? The prosecutors I just mentioned, and we're just not going to comment on this.
You mentioned DOJ. Does he have any concerns that the deal prosecutors put together fell apart and couldn't make it by a judge?
We're not going to comment on specifics.
They're not going to comment on it, guys. Nothing will change. She's answered this question before, mind you, and the answer before was no comment. So why are you looking for answers? We gave you our answer. It's no comment. Also, did they mention it's a Trump-appointed prosecutor, so clearly it's politically motivated? I like how they slide that in. No comment on anything else. But hey, to all you left-wing media talking heads, did we mention that it's a Trump-appointed prosecutor? You guys get that? Yeah. All right. Cool. Moving on.
Follow up on Hunter. Is the president concerned that his son's legal challenges will continue to take attention away from the White House now that this plea deal has fallen apart?
I'm just not going to speak to the politics of this. I'm not going to speak to characterize any of this for the president. What I can say is that, and I've said this before, this is a personal matter. This is Hunter Biden, as you know, is a private citizen, and this was done in an independent way. This investigation is being led by a Trump-appointed prosecutor.
There it is again.
And so the Department of Justice is independent. We give them the space to be independent.
Hey, listen, I'm not going to comment, but it's a Trump-appointed prosecutor, and as you know, the Department of Justice is independent. But this Trump-appointed prosecutor, can you believe that, guys? Yeah, weird. I'll translate. The rest of it was, yes, the White House knows this is going to take all the attention. But KJP doesn't want to answer. It's a personal matter. We all have our eyes to see what's going on. We can all see what's happening right in front of us. The White House is attempting to sculpt the narrative that this also will be Trump's fault, which is just amazing. Orange man bad, will you? Orange man bad. So Biden's in trouble again, and of course, we all know what that means. More indictments for Trump. Because that's what it means all the time. I mean, I saw a video on Instagram last night. Fulton County, Georgia, they're putting barricades around the courthouse because orange man bad and more indictments coming in Georgia as well. He's got more charges being brought in the Mar-a-Lago White House document case. And we're still waiting to see what will happen with the January 6th indictments. It's crazy, yo. Like, at this point in American culture, if you are not being attacked by the media, by the White House, by the DOJ, I don't think that you're worth your salt. I feel like if you're not getting attacked, you're not doing the right thing. I can't be the only one. 615-737-9986 if you want to weigh in on this topic. You know, that they're going to frame this against Hunter as political, and they're going to frame this against Trump as non-political. But that's all the Democrats know how to do is project. They will project what's happening to Trump on Hunter, and they will project what's happening to Hunter on Trump. It's the craziest thing. It's the craziest thing. But to your non-player characters that consume left-wing media, the NPCs, if you will. If you don't know what an NPC is, that's like say you're playing a video game like Grand Theft Auto, and there's somebody walking down the sidewalk. That's an NPC. It's a non-player character. They're only there to do what they were programmed to do. They don't affect the game plot. They don't affect anything to do with the game. They're just doing what they were programmed to do. And that's what people that consume left-wing media are. Smooth-brained, left-wing NPCs. And they're going to believe whatever the media tells them, human centipede style. But we're supposed to believe that the DOJ is independent and the Democrats in power have nothing to do with it. Sounds about right. And, you know, Trump was stealing secrets. he was stealing secrets. He was probably going to sell them to Russia and North Korea. We'll find out all these secrets that he stole. And the only people he could trust were the Mar-a-Lago head of maintenance and his valet. Like, that is such a bad movie. Like, if Hollywood wasn't on strike, that could be Ocean's 14. You know? Mar-a-Lago edition. The valet, the gardener, the pool boy, the head of maintenance. Just a conspiracy to steal nuclear secrets. Sell them to Russia. And with all the additional charges, Trump is now facing 40 counts in that criminal case. Trump spokesperson Stephen Chung said, continued desperate flailing attempt by the Biden crime family and their Department of Justice to harass President Trump and those around him. It's like, your boos and your jeers mean nothing because we have seen what make you cheer. Nothing that you can throw at this man is going to sway me because I've seen what the left-wing media and political apparatus cheers for. That I know what you guys are about, so nothing you can say is going to sway me. Trump took to Truth Social to weigh in as well. He truthed. Is that what they do it? Is that they truth?
Sounds right to me.
Yeah, so he truthed. This is what he truthed. Whatever happened to crooked Joe Biden's document case? He had 20 more boxes than I did, and he wasn't covered by the Presidential Records Act. I was. When it first came out that Biden had all of these docs, many classified, almost everyone, including those on the left, said, there goes the case against Trump. But they waited and waited, got failed prosecutor deranged Jack Smith and struck, but did almost nothing on the really bad Biden document case. Many stored in Chinatown. Yeah. And many were stored at the Penn University. Surprisingly, after the office opened, they got a big Chinese money donation. Weird coincidences. You know, correlation doesn't equal causation, but there's just a lot of weird coincidences. And to be fair, the Biden document case, very different because the documents at Mar-a-Lago were not next to a nice Corvette. So, Orange Man bad. But, I mean, in all seriousness, we learned at the time that the classified documents in the garage, Hunter had access to them. Plain and simple. The New York Post drew that connection in January. That Hunter Biden lived there off and on in the Delaware home while he was addicted to drugs. And while he's addicted to drugs, living in the home, that was when him and his business partner, James Gillier, had an email together launching a business venture with the Chinese state-backed energy firm CEFC China Energy. That was the email where they said Hunter and two other business partners get 20% and 10% goes to Hunter's uncle and the remaining 10% held by H for the big guy. We all remember that. Joe, you're the big guy. You remember that at the debates? And that blank stare look from Joe Biden? I remember. I was there. So no charges for the big guy and his document, but more charges for Trump. Excellent. Excellent stuff. Again, if the media and the political elite of this country do not vilify you, it's because you're probably in on it. That's my opinion, at least. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Chris Hand. The time, my friends, 11:20 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. We know that diversification is an important part of the investing process, but how do you reduce risk of a portfolio through diversification? Well, you use correlations. Now think of bathing suit sales and suntan oil sales. They tend to move together, right? Think of bathing suit sales versus winter coat sales. More dissimilar movement, and that's the idea. But why is diversification so important? Well, think about it this way. Everybody would like to have this happen with their investments. They just go straight up. But what we know is this is really what tends to happen. Markets may go way up and then down, or down, then way up. Now let's say if we isolate parts of that curve right there, and the first curve right there, and the second curve right there. If you're putting money away for retirement, every time you put money in, if this is what's going on, you're buying more shares. Then just before you retire, the market goes up, you're really happy. If, on the other hand, you keep paying a higher and higher price and then the market goes down, you're really sad. And we can't choose what's going to happen with the market next. But what we can do is what we know through academic research, and there are Nobel Prizes awarded for this, is we can look for things that tend to move in dissimilar fashion. And what happens when we do that, we can reduce the volatility of the portfolio, hence bringing those curves in. Now that's the idea. Now if you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
Vladimir Putin is sweet-talking a summit of African leaders, and excitement's growing over the upcoming Mega Millions drawing. These stories and more at 11:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I'm excited about the Mega Millions. Maybe I can afford the paint for my roof.
I was getting ready to say, that should buy a lot of white paint.
This is exciting stuff. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Chris Hand. I hope that you are having a fantastic day. So we're talking about the Trump indictments and all the hearings that have been going on in Washington. And I don't know if you saw this, But there was one hearing that was happening yesterday that was pretty big. It was a hearing on transgender rights, okay? And Chloe Cole was there talking about why it's not good to transition kids. And Chloe, if you don't know her, she's a detransitioner, and she's really a great girl. I met her in Murfreesboro at the Turning Point Faith and Turning Point USA rally for teens against gender mutilation. And Chloe Cole said, there's no such thing as informed consent, and that she feels so bad. But that's only one aspect of it. There was something that happened that was very, very funny, and it involved our good friend Rep Cohen. This is what Cohen said. This really happened in real life. Okay, yesterday, the House Judiciary Committee.
Transgender people have been around for a long time.
Long time.
And they have rights.
Yep.
And they need to be respected. I read Ms. Scanlon's testimony. I wasn't here to hear it, and I think Penn didn't deal with your situation like they could have and should have in putting up some type of different barriers in the women's area.
So he's referencing Leah Thomas being undressing in the female locker room among female teammates. But did you catch? I don't want to bury the lead. Did you catch what he said? Listen one more time.
Transgender people have been around for a long time.
Long time.
And they have rights, and they need to be respected. I read Ms. Scanlon's testimony. I wasn't here to hear it, and I think Penn didn't deal with your situation like they could have and should have in putting up some type of different barriers in the women's area.
They could have put barriers up in the women's area if you didn't want a man in the women's locker room undressing in front of you. What? So you're wrong for asking for privacy in the locker room, but the school was wrong too, and they should have put up some barriers. Luckily, the person whose testimony he's referencing, she was still in the room, and she rebutted. Listen to this.
Ms. Scanlon, we just heard.
This is Matt Gaetz referencing Ms. Scanlon and Cohen's testimony. Listen to this.
Ms. Scanlon, we just heard my Democrat colleague, Mr. Cohen, say that your circumstance could have been fully resolved if we'd have just had some barriers up in the women's showers. Do you think that that's a sufficient way to resolve what we're dealing with here?
I think by Representative Cohen admitting that we need barriers acknowledges there are biological differences between men and women. And by acknowledging that we need to have private spaces that are separate from each other, why can't we just use the locker rooms that we've always used, the men's and the women's? If you're acknowledging that we need protection and privacy from these men, then you're acknowledging that the locker rooms we've always used are the correct ones.
Roasted. Absolutely roasted. And that's the whole thing. It's the hypocrisy of the situation. And she eloquently points it out. If you're acknowledging that the school should have put up some barriers in the locker room to protect us from this man undressing near us, then you're acknowledging the argument that men who identify as women do not belong in the women's locker room. Full stop. Full stop. The look on his face was absolutely priceless. And good on Scanlon for getting in there and weighing in on that. Because it's an absolute travesty that these girls have to deal with these men in the locker room. 615-737-9986 is the super text line number. So I just can't understand it, and there was more testimony there. A Texas mom was testifying before the committee, wondering, they're not wondering, just basically amplifying how important it was for her son to transition into a girl. Chloe Cole responded to that, and I'll have more from that after the news on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.30 on the dot this Friday morning. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. It's not going to feel like 110 degrees after all in Middle Tennessee today, but the National Weather Service says expected to feel like 109 degrees when you put the humidity in with the actual heat that we're going to have out there. Full forecast coming up in 2 minutes. War on Ukraine. Tom Rivers says Vladimir Putin's sweet-talking a summit of African leaders.
Addressing the gathering in St. Petersburg, the Russian leader hailed the continent's growing role in global affairs, and he offered to expand political and business ties. Mindful of some of the difficulties various states face, Putin said Moscow will continue to help ease the debt burden of African countries, with Russia's total debt write-offs now reaching some $23 billion.
Back here at home, excitement growing over the upcoming Mega Millions drawing, now at more than $900 million. DeMarco Morgan.
The chance to win $1 in $302 million, with that lucky ticket holder having the option to take a one-time lump sum of their winnings or take distributions of the cash in 29 annual payments. In recent years, we've seen the jackpot regularly surpass the $1 billion mark.
That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN. What's going on? It's Chris Hand. If you want to be a part of the conversation, the super text line, we keep them texts flowing, 615-737-9986. Or you can always call, too, if you like to kick it old school. You can also find me on Twitter, Instagram, Truth Social. I'm at Chris Hand on air. So yesterday, before the House Judiciary Committee, there was a hearing on gender-affirming care for minors. Yeah. First of all, the language that the left uses is just awful. It's not gender-affirming care. It's quite literally mutilation. It's gender mutilation. But that aside, a Texas mom and a counselor testified before the House Judiciary Committee expressing how important gender transition was for her child. Her child is now 18 and has not undergone any surgeries. Miriam Reynolds spoke about how she knew her child was trans. She claimed that she knew her 11-year-old was trans when the child eschewed stereotypical girl things like the color pink. Oh, so if you're a girl and you don't like the color pink, then you're probably trans. I mean, girls don't have to like pink to be girls. Just pointing that out. I'll also point out, I have a pink polo shirt. It's one of my Easter shirts. Not a girl. So boys can like pink without being girls. But the obvious truth has been obfuscated by many in the trans activism world. Preference for the color pink, it just means boys are trans. There's a TV show called My Trans Life. And in it, a child called Rebecca discusses being gender nonconforming and how they knew they were trans at 8 years old. The kid says, I felt like I was a girl because I liked the color pink. And I liked girl clothes and how they wear their hair and stuff. I'm a girl in my head and my heart. It's 8 years old. An 8-year-old. I read the definition for Munchausen syndrome by proxy yesterday on the show. But that, if you're 8 years old and you're telling people that you're trans, you're a victim of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, would be my bet. Well, anyway, the mom testifying said Cameron told us he was transgender when he was 11 years old. Reynolds said of her biological daughter, referring to him with male pronouns in Congress. He was clearly dealing with something, but we didn't know what it was or how to help him. But then he told us, my husband and I, that he wanted transition. So we told him that we had the same instinct and we love him no matter what, and we'll always be there for him. So Reynolds testified that she and her husband drew on their years working with children as they made their next decisions for their child. And they immediately decided to go along with whatever the 11-year-old said. Because when you're 11, life-altering decisions should be your decision. That's good parenting. I hope you note the sarcasm. So, oh my gosh. So anyway, the mom said we needed to affirm him from our years, and we knew we needed to affirm him from our years and years of working with foster youth. Great. So that working with foster kids, already emotionally damaged, so they know what to do. But she admits we didn't know what to do next. We were scared. We didn't know anyone who had any trans kids. We had never even heard of gender-affirming care. Doubtful. But she goes, I prayed that it was a phase, but I already knew that it wasn't. So she had never heard of gender-affirming care, she tells the Judiciary House Committee. She prayed it was a phase, but she also knew that it wasn't a phase and knew she had to transition the kid. Do you understand the logical fallacy there? Reynolds then described how she knew that her child's insistence on being born in the wrong body was not a phase, but a permanent condition that required the child being treated differently, despite only being 11 years old. Interesting. So Chloe Cole, who is a detransitioner, that's somebody who transitioned and then has decided that it was the wrong move. Chloe Cole decided she was trans when she was like 13 or 14 years old, got a double mastectomy at 15 years old, meaning both of her breasts removed at 15. And then at 16 years old, she realized she wasn't trans. She just fell into the hyperloop of being what do they call it? It's online when people tell you look great as a boy. It's like this hyperloop of affirmation of people in the trans community telling you, it's like grooming. They'll say, cut your hair a little bit shorter. Wow, you look great as a boy. Oh man, you should try wear boy clothes. Whoa, you look amazing. So she gets stuck in this hyperloop of affirmation, and she falls into these traps of becoming trans. And then she wakes up one day and she realizes, I'm not trans. What did I do? Like so many other detransitioners. A lot of times you don't hear the stories of the detransitioners because the LGBTQ mafia will shout them down on the internet and devalue their story. You know, we're always to believe somebody's lived experience unless they go against the left-wing media. But Chloe Cole, who was in Murfreesboro with me for the Teens Against Gender Mutilation rally last spring, she's awesome. She's smart. She's eloquent. And she had this to say about that mom, Miss Reynolds, and about transitioning in general in front of the House Judiciary Committee yesterday.
It's an important legal principle that we have informed consent, fully informed consent for life-altering medical procedures. And are you then suggesting that it was not really full informed consent?
I mean, no matter how much information they would have given me, as a child, I just would not have been able to consent to this. And my parents were required to sign off on these, but it was under duress. I don't think it was really consent. It was coercion. They were given the false dichotomy of either a child transitions or she dies. But transition almost killed me.
It's an important legal principle.
So
that
she
we
said,
have
she said that her parents were told you can either transition or die. That's how they say this. Gender affirming care is saving lives because the kids are suicidal. If we don't let them transition, they'll die. Oh, no. Like that's such a false dichotomy. And Chloe says it so perfectly. And a lot of these kids, they wake up to the fact that they were lied to. They wake up to the fact that they should have never transitioned in the first place. But you don't hear their stories. You're not allowed to hear their stories. Chloe is one of the most famous detransitioners because she's not afraid to speak out. She's quoted as saying, I can't stay quiet anymore. I need to do something about this and share my own cautionary tale. You're hearing more and more about this as the transitioning of kids has gotten more and more prevalent. A detransitioned woman sued her sex change doctors for $1 million due to permanent disfigurement. Her surgery did not go as planned and caused horrible complications. This is in Canada. A detransitioner filed a lawsuit against those who facilitated and botched a life-altering double mastectomy that left her with permanent disfigurement and profound psychological scarring. Serena Adalco alleged that instead of acting with her best interests at heart, the doctors and therapists she visited acted more like ideologues hell-bent on affirming her belief that she was a male by any means necessary. The lawsuit was filed in the Tarrant County District Court of Texas. It names quite a few doctors. Each individual and organization played a role in Adalco's botched transition, seemingly ignoring the fact that she was a vulnerable teenager, struggling with a slew of mental health issues in order to push experimental gender-affirming medical therapies. And that's what these are, experimental gender-affirming medical procedures. These kids will never be the same. Don't ever let somebody tell you that puberty blockers is just delaying puberty. Oh, these transitions will help them, live a good life. They won't. They'll never be able to have children. They'll never be able to go back. It is a life-altering decision. And they're pushing it on kids as young as 8 and 9. It is so sad. According to that lawsuit, Adalco began her transition in 2019 at the age of 17. Think about where you were at 17 and the decisions you were making in your life. Do you think you were in any state to transition yourself permanently? Well, Adalco wasn't. In fact, that's why she's suing. She was a vulnerable teenager with a struggling with a slew of mental health issues. Really want to just emphasize that. A slew of mental health issues. And we see that again and again. And according to the lawsuit, when she began her transition, she visited with Del Scott Perry's doctor's office at the recommendation of the Transcendence International Foundation. Yep, Transcendence. There, Perry wasted no time in prescribing a slew of cross-sex hormones at an outrageously large off-label dosage. And he did so without consulting Adolko's parents or even warning her of the potential complications. Just under 2 years later, Adolko's relationship therapist, Barbara Wood, wrote and signed a falsehood-riddled letter recommending her for a double mastectomy, and the procedure was negligently approved by doctors Richard Santucci and Ashley DeLeon. Despite having actual knowledge of Adolko's long history and of her current struggle with major depressive disorder, autism, and other mental health disorders, the lawsuit states no Crane Clinic practitioner gave her a psychological assessment to ensure that she had the capacity to consent or the proper motivations for wanting the surgery. These poor kids, man. She was dealing with autism. It seems to be that the autism is a recurring theme. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. But all of these stories that I read, autism in these transitions seems to be a trending theme. And it's because when you're autistic, you can get fixated on something. And if you get an autistic kid fixated on something at a young enough age, it becomes overpowering, and that's all they can think about. And it seems like this happens again and again and again. I feel so bad for these kids. So the lawsuit argues that the approval for the surgeries was itself a gross breach of medical standard of care, given Adolko's comorbidities, age, and other similar red flags. But these doctors don't care about red flags. Adolko's surgery didn't go as planned, and she had horrible complications. Pools of blood forming in her torso. Parts of her body literally peeling off. And the doctors dismissed her concerns and did not even advise her to seek emergency care. It's so crazy. It's so crazy that this is even a topic that we're discussing in 2023. Following the botched surgery, Adolko began researching the procedure, which is like a red flag in and of itself. How can you have informed consent if you haven't even researched the procedure before the surgery? She didn't research the procedure until the botched surgery already happened. And it was only then that she learned that the surgery was experimental and just rife with complications. It was only then that she realized that the healthcare professionals had recklessly, if not intentionally, overlooked or ignored her psychological history to justify the approach that they had already predetermined to be correct for anyone confused about their gender identity. And the lawsuit explains that Adolko had struggled with her gender identity since she was a child, and upon experiencing puberty earlier that year, began to dislike her female body. And I point out, everyone that goes through puberty in the beginning goes through that awkward phase. You can't let a kid try to transition because they're going through the awkward phase of puberty. It happens to all of us. I mean, she underwent numerous psychological evaluations as a teen and even spent time in rehabilitation, but none of this was taken into consideration by the doctors who pushed her down the path of transition. And unfortunately, I don't feel like this is a unique story. In fact, this story feels all too similar to all the stories that I have read on children transitioning and detransitioning. It's crazy. The parents need to step up. You shouldn't be letting your kids transition. It's 11:50 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Chris Hand. Thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. We know that diversification is an important part of the investing process, but how do you reduce risk of a portfolio through diversification? Well, you use correlations. Now think of bathing suit sales and suntan oil sales. They tend to move together, right? Think of bathing suit sales versus winter coat sales. More dissimilar movement, and that's the idea. But why is diversification so important? Well, think about it this way. Everybody would like to have this happen with their investments. They just go straight up. But what we know is this is really what tends to happen. Markets may go way up and then down, or down then way up. Now let's say if we isolate parts of that curve right there, and the first curve right there, and the second curve right there. If you're putting money away for retirement, every time you put money in, if this is what's going on, you're buying more shares. Then just before you retire, the market goes up, you're really happy. If, on the other hand, you keep paying a higher and higher price and then the market goes down, you're really sad. And we can't choose what's going to happen with the market next. But what we can do is what we know through academic research, and there are Nobel Prizes awarded for this, is we can look for things that tend to move in dissimilar fashion. And what happens when we do that, we can reduce the volatility of the portfolio, hence bringing those curves in. Now that's the idea. Now if you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Chris Hand. I've had a great day with you today. Thank you for joining me on the show. There was a couple of things that I wanted to make sure I got to, because if I don't get to them today, they're just going to be irrelevant come Monday. I don't know if you heard this, but GOP Rep Nancy Mace out of South Carolina, I believe, she was at a prayer breakfast this morning. A prayer breakfast. And this was her comment to open up the chat at the prayer breakfast.
And when I woke up this morning at 7, I was getting picked up at 7:45. Patrick, my fiance, tried to pull me by my waist over this morning in bed. And I was like, no, baby, we don't got time for that this morning.
Oh.
I got to get to the prayer breakfast. And I got to be on time. And a little TMI. But
just a little bit.
He can wait. I'll see him later tonight.
At a prayer breakfast? At a prayer breakfast. Lady, come on. Even if that's the case, you're at a prayer breakfast. That's not what you say to open up the prayer breakfast. Even I know that. And my kids, I mean, my kids will tell you, I'm very inappropriate. I don't say stuff like that. But like I'm very inappropriate. I would never open up a prayer breakfast with that. Like, isn't she supposed to be good at public speaking?
You would think after so much time in her profession, be a little better.
And then she's not the only Republican getting drugged today through the mud. She said something weird. And of course, Ron DeSantis is trying to reboot his campaign in Iowa. And he's getting slammed for saying this to a little girl.
Yeah, it's good to meet you too. Oh, what is that? An icy? Yeah, that's probably a lot of sugar, huh?
Did you catch that? He goes, what is that? An icy? Yeah. Probably a lot of sugar, huh? Everybody's like, man, no fun DeSantis. As a dad, just putting my dad hat on again, like, it is a lot of sugar, kid. Cut the ices out. You don't need that. All that red dye. Yikes. All right, hey, Matt Murphy's up next. He's at Bold Patriot Brewing. You should stop by there. Have a daytime beer with my friend Matt. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN.